Wednesday morning, along with Deborah Norville. I'm Brian Gumble. Joe Garagiola is out in Cincinnati. We'll check in with him in just a moment because we're going to be talking baseball, which, as you know, is a game of statistics. Well, a lot of fans tire of those kind of stats. Bob Vazell, our science correspondent, has found a young computer whiz who's got a new way to rate relief pitchers. He's going to explain this in this half hour. Deb?
All of you turned on your TV this morning for probably a variety of reasons, but how many of you are watching television this morning because you're addicted? Psychiatrists say, a growing number of them, that television is something to which you can become addicted, and plenty of folks are hooked. We'll talk with an expert in a minute to find out just what that means for all of us. Joe Garagiola is hooked on baseball, but for some people, it's become the American obsession. Is television addictive? Well, psychiatry has broadened the meaning of addiction to now include compulsive behavior. And if that's correct, then Rutgers University psychologist Dr. Robert Kubey says there are plenty of people who are helplessly glued to the tube. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
How many people, whether you use the word addiction, hooked, whatever, how many people are hooked on TV, would you guess?
I would say that most Americans have some sort of viewing habit. And the question is, it can be considered to be on a continuum. There's some people who watch 60, 70, 90 hours a week.
They've got to be addicted.
Well, they have a very serious habit, and a lot of other things fall by the wayside as a result of how much viewing they're doing. There was a recent Gallup poll done that showed that 42% of American adults believe that they are viewing more than they would like. And in fact, from the diagnostic categories that psychiatrists and psychologists use, that can be one criterion of heavy use or indeed substance dependence, if you want to talk about drugs for that matter.
Compulsive behavior, because that's what we're talking about, means an inability to control it. How does that manifest itself in television? You come home, you got to have the set on or else you're not happy?
That happens. People like to fill up the space that they live in with sound and with pictures, and indeed an awful lot of people will report sitting down, say, to watch L.A. Law just for an hour. That's their intention, and they're still there 3 or 4 hours later. And again, that's an indication that people are having difficulty controlling their habit. Now, in most cases, this isn't a huge problem. People have it under general control. But it can present some problems. For instance, in the familial or in a family environment, are the children being neglected because the parent would rather watch things on TV? In fact, at this time of the year, we have the problem of, we even have a term in our culture for the football widow, the woman usually who can't even get her husband's attention throughout the weekend because he's watching 6 football games.
Or the couch potato kids who are also glued to the tube the minute they get home from school until they go to bed.
That's right, and in fact there's strong evidence now that children who view heavily tend to be more obese, and it stands to reason if a child is spending 4 hours a day in front of the television instead of getting out and about and exercising and being outside, the child may well be overweight.
You make your statements not based on any casual observance, but on some research that you and your colleagues did. Explain it to me. You had people record at odd moments of the day what they were doing? Well,
what we do is we randomly signal people about 6 or 8 times a day, usually for the period of a week. And
with a beeper or something?
With a beeper that they carry, and they fill out a little short report form and tell us where they were, what they were doing, and how they were feeling. And what's nice about this methodology is we get a sense of how people are feeling and acting and behaving out in the real world, because you see a lot of research that's done on television viewing has been done in laboratories, and I would suggest if I hooked you up with electrodes and put you in a lab, that isn't the way you normally...
It wouldn't be real comfortable, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not the way you really view television. And in this way we found a number of interesting things about viewing. We found, for instance, that the more people view television, the less they like it, but they remain relaxed throughout the time that they view. So that's one of the rewards of viewing.
And is that the addictive quality of television? If you stop watching TV, you're less relaxed, therefore you stay 3 hours past L.A. Law.
That's very perceptive, and that's one of the main things that drives the habit. In fact, the fact that people feel relaxed is almost as soon as they turn on the set, builds in their minds an association, whether it's conscious or not. I will feel relaxed if I watch TV. In fact, it works faster than alcohol. It works faster than many tranquilizers. So the habit becomes very entrenched, and people have difficulty pulling themselves away from the set.
What else did you find?
Well, we found that there's also what I call a passive spillover effect, that not only people feel relaxed while they view, but they also feel rather passive. They're physically passive, obviously. But they also report feeling passive for a good half hour, sometimes an hour and a half after they've stopped viewing, which means that they are less inclined to engage in more challenging and intense or demanding activities, even after viewing. So in some ways, television can inculcate some passivity in some people.
Would that not then fit the definition of a narcotic? If the soothing effect continues after the imbibing?
Well,
whatever
actually, the
product
soothing
is?
effect doesn't occur. I mean, people don't seem to feel relaxed after. They just tend to feel more passive, which is one of the unfortunate. I mean, actually, it would be better probably if people felt more relaxed after they viewed, but we don't find much evidence of that. That's why people continue to view. They almost have a sense that if I give up my set right now, if I turn it off, I'm not going to feel the same way. And people sort of feel this sort of void suddenly, and they don't turn the set off, and so it's on for hours and
A lot
hours.
of people are listening to what you have to say and thinking, gee whiz, maybe I should turn the TV off more often. How hard is it to do?
Well, they should certainly not turn it off now. It's harder.
Thank
it's
you.
harder for people to turn it off than it really ought to be. And it's one recommendation I make to people is that they're often grown-ups, so they ought to be able to get their habit under better control. They can think about other things they might do. They might even generate a list, put it up on a refrigerator with a magnet of things they might do when they're finished with the dinner dishes and what else they might do with their time that day.
But we're not talking about between 7 and 9 in the morning, I'm quite sure, right?
Of course not. This is a different kind of program.
Professor Kubey, thank you. Really interesting stuff. We'll be back with more in just a moment, right after these messages.